It is being reported that the United States is preparing to send additional forces to the Middle East as the war with Iran enters its third week. Thousands of U.S. Marines are expected to be sent, though it's not yet clear how they would be deployed. President Trump said today that the Islamic Republic will be hit very hard over the next week. Let's go straight to Washington and our State Department correspondent Tom Bateman. What more do we know about these deployments?
Sophie, this is a deployment of the USS Tripoli, which is an amphibious assault ship.
Bom, parece que os Estados Unidos vai enviar mais tropas para o Médio Oriente, e parece que desta vez vai haver mesmo confronto pessoal, frente a frente. Se isso acontecer, vai ser uma guerra real.
A public official announcement by the Trump administration, but is being briefed by US officials tonight. This task force is currently in Japan. It would take them about...
Bem, como se esse aqui também não fosse uma guerra real. É uma guerra real, mas não tem nenhum militar envolvido norte-americano no terreno. Eles estão só a lançar bombas uns aos outros, e se os Estados Unidos mandar mesmo tropas no terreno, aí já virou uma coisa de outras dimensões.
Escalation to the Iranian regime. Meanwhile, the message for Americans back at home has been very much about him dictating the course of this conflict. He was asked today, when would it be over? And he said, soon. He said, this will end when he feels it in his...
Thank you.
Eu também achava que isso ia acontecer assim muito rápido, mas afinal parece que está a acontecer como aconteceu no caso da Ucrânia, em que achávamos que o Putin ia chegar lá e ia pegar aquilo num instante, uma semana já estava a guerra resolvida e acabou por estender até hoje. E parece que estamos aí para a mesma situação aí no Irão, porque eles agora elegeram um novo líder, um novo líder religioso, e aquilo vai continuar. E as minhas previsões deram tudo errado. Basicamente, a guerra vai continuar mais, e vamos ver.
Well, the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the US and Israel have so far hit 15,000 targets since the war began 2 weeks ago tomorrow. The United States is now offering a $10 million reward for anyone with information about the whereabouts of Iran's leaders. America claims that Iran's new supreme leader is in hiding, wounded, and likely disfigured after the initial strikes that killed his father and other members of his family. The US says Iran's Air Force, Air Defense and Navy have been completely destroyed, and you can see here the extent of the strikes by the US and Israel. Our diplomatic correspondent Caroline Hawley has our story now.
From an embattled Iranian regime today, a show of defiance. Loyalists came out in large numbers, just as their new supreme leader had asked. And many carried his image, though Mujtaba Khamenei himself has still not been seen. In Washington, the Secretary of Defense said the US and Israel had now hit 15,000 targets around Iran, that its military had been decimated.
Iran's leadership is in no better shape. Desperate and hiding, they've gone underground, cowering. That's what rats do. We know the new so-called not-so-supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured.
But state-run TV showed Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, out on the streets today, even looking relaxed. And another very powerful figure in the regime who had a message for Donald Trump.
The problem with Trump is that he's not intelligent enough to understand that Iranians are a mature and strong and determined nation. The more pressure he exerts, the stronger our nation's willpower will become.
This is the Al-Quds rally held every year to oppose Israel. Suddenly, on the left of this image, an explosion nearby. Another airstrike took place as state-run TV was interviewing Iran's hardline head of the judiciary. People are not afraid of these attacks, he says. We will not back down in any way. But many Iranians are very afraid as the human cost of this war and the humanitarian consequences grow. This was footage released by the Iranian Red Crescent today.
It's a residential neighborhood with a narrow alley. Rescuers are working to find anyone still alive as quickly as possible.
The Red Crescent says nearly 20,000 homes have now been damaged, along with businesses, schools and 16 of its own facilities. Iranians are continuing to flee. More than 3 million of them have left their homes so far, according to the UN. At Turkey's border with Iran, one man said bombs were raining down on his homeland. Near the central city of Isfahan, one glimpse into the intensity of the bombardment. The man filming is clearly happy to see regime targets hit. Duck down, someone says, as airstrike follows airstrike. And Donald Trump says Iran will continue to be hit very hard. Caroline Hawley, BBC News.
Well, overnight, British Typhoon jets flew air defence operations over Bahrain for the first time.
A coisa parece que vai continuar, porque temos aqui uma zona,
flying defensive sorties over many of the Gulf states to protect British interests and people. In Oman, state media said 2 people died after security forces intercepted a drone near an industrial area. And in the United Arab Emirates, a building in Dubai was damaged in the financial district after debris hit a building after a drone was shot down. And tonight, police in the capital, Abu Dhabi, said 45 people have been arrested for filming and spreading misinformation on the attacks. Well, the impact of the war on oil supplies has seen...
Isto aqui estamos aí para sítios que nem sabemos como é que vai ser. E que, todas as previsões que as pessoas fazem, vai sempre dar errado, porque não sabemos exatamente como é que tudo isso vai se passar. É muita informação aí que... O Irão é um país extremamente populoso, tem uma população gigantesca e isso, se for arrastando com o tempo, pode haver populações que vão começar a tomar, que vão estar mais ao lado do Estado Islâmico, e aí fica mais difícil os Estados Unidos e Israel combaterem e conseguirem a vitória. Pelo que estamos a ver até agora, a vitória parece que começa a caminhar mais para o lado do Irão do que dos Estados Unidos e Israel. Porque eles conseguiram sim destruir muita das armas e dos radares e muita força bélica e força poderio também dos líderes. Mas mesmo assim, vê novos e aquilo continua. Então, pode ser uma guerra infinita que não vai haver resolução assim tão simples, tão cedo. Porque o Irão é um país forte, um país extremamente forte e extremamente populoso. E estamos a ver agora o resultado de todo esse conflito com o preço do combustível.
Petrol prices in the UK hit their highest level for 18 months, and diesel is at its highest since November 2023, according to the motoring organisation, the RAC. Today, the Chancellor met representatives from the Petrol Retailers Association who accused the government of using inflammatory language about profiteering from the crisis. They said petrol retailers were keeping prices competitive and, in some cases, even losing money. Here's our economics editor, Faisal Islam.
The effective closure of the Straits of Hormuz in recent days has been unprecedented. The Iran conflict playing out in Gulf waters, sending a wave of inflation across the world. Including today, up Downing Street, with petrol bosses summoned to number 11 after the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband told the BBC action would be taken against price gouging and rip-offs.
We're doing all we can to provide fuel at competitive prices for our customers.
Are you taking advantage of people though?
No, we're not.
His Petrol Retailers Association had threatened to boycott the meeting after saying ministerial language had led to abuse of staff at the pumps. The Chancellor told bosses they had to keep prices down. Here's what's actually happened to petrol prices. In under 2 weeks of this conflict, they are up about 8 pence per litre to an 18-month high. And diesel, well, that's up even more, nearly 17p per litre in that 2-week period. And that, in turn, is driven by these trends in the crude oil price, which has been up and then volatile hour by hour, but settling around $100 a barrel, higher than it was before the conflict. And that's despite the emergency release of hundreds of millions of barrels of stockpiled oil around there. And this, in turn, is what's driving the oil price, as we've shown the tanker traffic in the Gulf at the Strait of Hormuz. That's a choke point, and it's coming to a standstill compared to, say, the same day last year. Nothing is officially getting through. Now, hundreds of millions of barrels of oil is stuck in the Gulf, either on tankers, in storage, or simply left in the ground. And today we've been hearing from the crew of a tanker stuck here in the Gulf.
Every day on the ship, I can see missile launches and hear explosions.